Hello everybody, welcome to Jimmy Does Knitting. It's been a while. There's a lot of stuff going on, but let's get to it. First, I'm Jimmy. I am an expat living in Amsterdam. Beautiful sunny day today. Not really. But yeah, you can find me on Ravelry at Jimmy Does Knitting or Instagram at Stereo Bait. Everything that I'm going to talk about today is going to be in the show notes. So it will have the patterns, the yarns, stuff like that. And then like and subscribe. So it's been a while because I've been knitting on like one or two things. Also, I've had a really busy time at work and I haven't been doing a whole lot. So I didn't really know what to present or whatnot. And then I realized I just wanted to talk about sweaters. It's almost spring. It's like hinting in the air and the like flowers on the trees and stuff, but it's still cold. And I love knitting sweaters and I've been wearing hand knit sweaters all winter and I want to talk about that and what I have. So I'm going to go over some sweaters that I have in my collection of things that I've done. This is not exhaustive of all of the sweaters that I've knit or comprehensive thing. It's just, I think we're gonna go over 11 sweaters. And then if you want to do more, you can check out my Ravelry. It has more of the sweaters and I keep pretty decent notes. I don't really have a whole lot of accessories or anything, but we're talking about sweaters today, so that's what's happening. We have 11 sweaters we're going to discuss, and I have a list of topics. So we will go over pattern, designer, associated company, if it has something, designer info and company stuff. So like, because we're specifically talking about men's patterns in this video, I wanted to give like other options or like what I thought of different things related to this sweater, whether it's the same designer or company or something. The yarn and how it wears, garment thoughts, and a garment construction, because there are different ways to do sweaters: seams, no seams, top down, bottom up, different shoulders, that sort of thing. And I wanted to just talk about some of that stuff and general how I feel about it. So these are not in an order of how I knit them. It's kind of grouped by a garment type loosely, but there is some sort of flow to this. Anyway, we will start. And the first one is this classic jumper by Knitwits and Yarn. So this is slightly modified because this is a garment that Mr. Does Knitting wanted. This is knit out of, sorry, I need my cheat sheet. This is the classic jumper by Knitwits and Yarns, and this is knit out of Mayflower Molly Fine. It's okay. It's a very woolly yarn, and it's super like thick. It's like an actual Aran. I think sometimes the British and Australians call like Aran like worsted Aran, and so my gauge was all off on this one. But Knitwits and Yarns has really good, like, I would say basic men's patterns, and he has some intarsia stuff that's really beautiful as well, and it's really good source for looking at men's knitting. This one is a drop shoulder seamed, so you seam at the top and you work it bottom up and then top down, which is my favorite construction. The collar is not folded. I knit like the extra small to get like a medium size because my gauge was so far off with this. So I can't really comment to it. Also, it does not have stripes in the regular pattern. It's something that Mr. Does Knitting wanted, so I did this for him, but it never fit him. I also did a split hem. I don't know if you can see that. So we could do it, but otherwise it's just straight stockinette, and it is, yeah, it's a nice knit. It's a good one. It's a great like template for a basic sweater for any man, and you can kind of play with it like I did a little bit. I would not recommend the yarn for this. It was very like unspun almost. It wasn't an unspun yarn, but it's very loosely spun, and it had like some areas where it was really like twisty and some areas where it was very thin, and it made for a little bit of an inconsistent fabric, which I recognize, but not a lot of people do. Overall, it's super warm. I like wearing this. I usually don't wear stuff with like this ecru color in it. And I usually just wear all black, as you can tell by looking at my channel and some of the stuff that I'm going to have in here. But it's a nice sweater. It's super warm. It's great on those cold days. It's a nice warm hug. It was easy to make. So I would highly recommend this, not the yarn, but I would recommend this sweater for you to make. That's number one. Number two is a self-drafted one. This one was made out of Drops Cotton Marino, and this was the attempt at making the sweater that Mr. Does Knitting wanted, and I think it works this time. This second one is a self-drafted pattern, and what it was the actual attempt at the one that I tried to make previously with the classic jumper, but in a different way. I did Drops Cotton Merino, so this is a DK weight sweater, but it has the same features as the other one, and I just drafted the pattern myself because I could get the size that I wanted and stuff that I wanted. So this is black and white striped. It has a split hem here, as per the request. The stripes I think were sized a little bit differently. It has a knitted thing. I did a Kitchener stitch at the shoulders. I don't know if you can see that, but it makes for a really nice like seamless thing. And then I knit from the body bottom up, and then the sleeves were top down, and it worked out really well. It's my favorite sweater construction. It's pretty easy to figure out. For this, I used Amy Herzog's Ultimate Sweater Book. She goes through basically how you make a sweater with different types of yarn and different construction methods. It's a really good book if you want to draft your stuff yourself, and I would highly recommend it. It's super just like walks you through, this is how you do math, these are the types of shoulders and like designs and things that you can do. And it gives you a basic knowledge of all of the like sort of standard types of construction, and it will walk you through and really help you make your own sweater. So I would recommend this. I refer back to this every so often, and it's just nice. It's great at explaining the math if you don't understand the math of things, and I did not at one point, which is why I got that other sweater like it was, and why this sweater turned out better. It's wearing well. One thing is, and this happens a lot, is especially with like a white or an undyed color and then like a dyed color, it slightly colored the white a little bit, the black, and it's just, it happens. It's part of the process. It still is a contrast. I know that it happens even more so with like a red and white. I've never done that combination, but it's always something that you have to be careful about. I would always recommend, especially if you think that colors are going to bleed, probably do a cold wash. I do like 5 minutes, maybe put some like white wine vinegar in there because that helps the colors hold fast. But then just like a series of rinses of very cold, and then that will help it bloom. So this is 50% cotton and 50% merino. It's wearing well. The cotton adds a little bit of heaviness to it, but the merino makes it like soft and warm. It's not really so drapey, and it's aging well and it's wearing well. He wears it every so often, and it still looks nice. So, it's only been about a year, but this is my creation, and I quite like that. So that's sweater number 2. Sweater 3 is another self-drafted pattern. This one is a Guernsey that I made, and you can see, hopefully it blows out a little bit, and you can see the texture. It's on the front and the back. So I didn't know what I wanted to make. I had made a previous sweater with this yarn, which was Rowan felted tweed in black, and I hated it. I spent like a month and a half on this thing. It didn't fit well, and I tore it out. But what I did do is I wanted to use the yarn because it was nice yarn. I like a tweedy sort of thing, and I wanted a little bit of texture. And I held it with Holst Supersoft in black. And then that made about a worsted weight yarn, and that worked out well. So I wanted to do something simple, but also self-drafted and something that had a little bit of meaning. I was watching Sam from Irish Farm Arts, and he was talking about Guernseys, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make one. So because I live in the Netherlands, there's some sort of history with Guernseys, and I was like, oh, I can make, you know, a historic fisherman's sweater for something that I like live by or something like that. Typically, these were made by fishermen and their families. Each village had their own unique like crest or something, and then this was going to be, it was fish like first like innerwear and then outerwear, I believe. But regardless, they would knit it twice the size with usually a dark blue worsted weight yarn. Sometimes it was a different color, but at least in the Netherlands, it was a dark blue worsted weight yarn. And then they would put the motif in per the village. Everything was like hand done. And then they would scour it. So wash it in super hot water. And then it would felt together and it would shrink and it would become like airtight and watertight. And then you can use it on the ship, and you would feel warm. You wouldn't get like, you know, the air going through and stuff like that. So that's kind of how a Guernsey was used. It's named after I think like the Guernsey Islands or something like that. And yeah, so it has unique history, and I thought it related to where I live. There are two books I used to create this. One is this Patterns for Guernseys, Jerseys, and Arans, Fisherman Sweaters from the British Isles by Gladys Thompson. This was really good because she just went down and like historically documented like a bunch of sweaters. There's some Arans. I don't really want to show all the patterns, but I was in it for the Guernseys, and it has a lot of like stitch patterns of stuff. It's very much a like, here's this sweater from this area, and I'll give you a rough pattern of how to knit it. And it has some other information and a little bit of history. But what I used this for mainly was to figure out the construction of how these were traditionally done. And then I have another book. This is Knitting from the Netherlands, Traditional Dutch Fisherman Sweaters. And this is what I used for the stitch patterns, which I adapted. This one has a little bit more story to it. It has some cooler pictures, and it has some like better schematics. So like, if you look at this, it has like old people and then like a diagram of the thing and then some information about the chart and stuff, and it's written in a different way. And I really like this book in terms of like visual language. The patterning is not so well written, and it's also not as diverse, which I think might just be a Dutch thing. I don't know. But I sold two patterns from this. I combined them into this sweater. I used the actual patterning from How to Construct the Thing from the other book, and I came up with this. And it was my favorite sweater until one of the other sweaters that we have coming up. But I love this one. I would redo it a different way next time. I have some ideas, so I would not publish this pattern. It needs to be refined, but I think that we're close. I like a tighter sleeve and a little bit of a tighter body. The one thing I will say is I also like a tighter neck. So I ripped out the neck at one point and then re-sewed it in. Basically, it was like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And just this 1/3 was just too big for me. I sewed it in, I knit a little bit of a longer neckband and folded it over. I can tell you this because I made it. But it is so warm and cozy. This is a great combination. I think it looks great. It was fun to knit. It was easy to knit. There's some cables on here, and we talked about these cables in my like cable obsessed episode, where it's a very like felty yarn, so the cables turned out to be pretty flat. And the same thing with like the texture and the bumps, which is perfectly fine. And yeah, I love this sweater. It's so great to wear. I don't typically really like a worsted weight sweater that's just knit and stockinette net. I think it just looks too handcrafted. But if you put like a simple texture like this on, I think it's great. So it used up some yarn that I was going to use. It's really nice to wear, and it goes back to kind of where I live, and it has some heritage and some stuff to it. So it was a nice little sweater with purpose. It was great learning, and I'd like a chance to do this again. Woolly Knit, if you want to sponsor me for a cone along, we're gonna do it, and I will make a Guernsey sweater. I will refine this, and I will use your stuff, and then we're gonna publish the pattern. All right, if you're out there, hit me up. So this is my Guernsey that I love. And it's wearing so well over the winter. I wear this quite often. Next one is my first sweater. So this is not a drop shoulder like the previous three. This is a set-in sleeve. And this is the Redford sweater by Julie Hoover for Brooklyn Tweed. And it's knit up in Westwool Tandem, because that's the DK version. And it's a really nice sweater. Couple things. This was my first one. It has this like edge detail for pickup stitches and stuff all around, and I blew it. I didn't pick it up right, especially on the collar. It looks a little weird. And I also didn't seam it correctly. So let's just go back from the beginning. Brooklyn Tweed is a great place for male sweater patterns. They're all very well written. Whoever does the tech editing is fine. It's explained tremendously well. I've not used any of their yarns, so I can't comment on that. It's just expensive to import them, so I have not done that. But they have really good, really solid, really well-fitting, really well-written men's patterns, and this one is no exception. One thing about Brooklyn Tweed I would say is I don't find them particularly like awe-inspiring or like groundbreaking, but they're like really nice, good, solid men's patterns where you put it on somebody's body, it's gonna fit well, it's gonna be great. The one thing I think is that like in general their patterns are a little short. It must be like the size charts that they're grading to. I'm about 6 feet tall, like 183, and I usually knit it a little bit longer. Is maybe the only complaints I have about the Brooklyn Tweed stuff. I also have done some other ones, and those are also coming up. So this is a set and sleeve construction. This was knit in 6 pieces. So there's a front, a back, there's this side detail, which I don't know if you can see, but there's these panels like under the underarm that add a little bit of interest. I think I just did these stockinette. I think they're supposed to be pearl. You can do moss stitch on them or something. And then the sleeves, and they're seamed. What I will say about this, because I saw Jonathan's Days is going to try this, and I do not recommend it because I've done it and you can see what's going to happen. Is with a set in sleeve shoulder, especially if you're doing the sleeves separate, they say knit them flat and then seam it. But you're like, oh, I can knit these in the round because it's so much more enjoyable, and then I'll just seam it in and it will be fine. And the answer to that is no, it's not going to be fine. And the reason why is, I don't know if you can see this, but it bunches. It's really bunchy. And like, even if I try to seam it in, like I know that this top part is flat knit, so it's like round up until the like sleeve cap. And then I sewed it in, and it just never fits well. I've done this a couple of times. It doesn't fit well if you knit it in the round and then you do a set in sleeve and just like sew it in. It's just, it has like a little, you can't make it right. So do what they say, knit it flat. You want to seam from the top center down to the pit, and then what you want to do is take it and go whoop, and then down. That's the way to do it. That's going to get you the cleanest finish, and that's how you go. So, is this my most beautiful piece of work? Absolutely not. Do I enjoy wearing it? Could it use another block? Probably. Would I do it differently if I did it again? Absolutely. But this is a really nice sweater. It fits me very well. It's a great basic sweater, and it was enjoyable to knit, especially for a first one. The yarn. So the yarn is Westwool Tandem. Stephen and Penelope is my local yarn shop. That's the one I go to the most often. It's actually the closest to me. So I did that. It was obviously a little bit more of an expensive yarn, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And I wanted to go into a place that knew how to help me with my first sweater. And I was like, okay, I have this pattern. It's supposed to be this yarn. This is like the recommended needle size. Like, help me buy the needles. Help me, like pick out the yarn. I want black. And went through it. So the people at the shop helped me do that. They were super nice, super good. And I'm really quite pleased with this. Would I use this yarn for this sweater again? No. Would I use this yarn again? Absolutely. And yeah, I just make it a little nicer next time. But it's great. This is not felting it's not really felting, and it's not pilling a lot, which is really, really nice because some of my other knits are really, really pilly. And yeah, so this is the Redford sweater and my thoughts on that. It's gonna be a long one today, kids. Number 5, the Otte sweater. So this is another Brooklyn Tweed pattern. This is by Jared Flood. He's the owner of Brooklyn Tweed, and he also is an amazing pattern writer. He does a lot of the men's patterns for Brooklyn Tweed. This is a top-down, it's supposed to be a colorwork sweater, and this is my second sweater, so I was not so ambitious. So I just did like a top-down yoke, because that's all I wanted. Drowning in Yarn recommended this like back in the day, so I went for it. And it's just like top-down yoke sweater, and it fits well. Like, it fits really nice. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the sweater itself. I did knit it a bit short, and this is what I was talking about. I followed the instructions, and I still think it's a bit short. Also, my construction skills have improved, so like the underarms are a little bit holy, and like the bind off on the sleeves is a little stretchy, but it's just a stockinette top down yoke sweater with a flat collar, and it's all right. The one thing about this that I hate is the yarn I used. I used We Are Knitters, and I used the Merifine, and the color black, and this thing pills. I have gone over this with a gleaner like 12 different times, and it looks kind of awful, if I'm going to admit it, and it was very expensive yarn. I don't know if this is showing up on camera or not. I'm trying to get it to blow out. But like, do you see that? Like, it's not wearing well at all. Like, the sweater's so comfortable, but it looks kind of shitty, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I'll wear it for a comfort knit, but I don't think it's like great in terms of the wool. Pattern fine. I don't think I'm going to use We Are Knitters again because of this sweater. It's just like, it also was expensive. It's like, I got this on sale, I think, and it still was just very expensive. And once again, this is one of the earlier ones where like, that's the yarn brand that like popped up and it seemed to fit, and like, I just spent a lot of money on it because I was like, I want to know that I can get something that works, and I was not familiar with other options. But there's a lot of other options out there that I both like and I think are more affordable. So that is my Otte sweater. We're going to take a little break. I have my friend Queen Elizabeth here, and I will have a sip of coffee. Okay, we're back. So the next two are not necessarily men's sweaters, and we can talk about that. But this one is a fever dream of color that I made. This is the Nightbook sweater by Rachel Eastley of Unwind Knitwear. And she put out like a test of, are you a beginner colorwork knitter? I want you to test some of my patterns. And I said, I've never knit colorwork before. Let me apply to this. And I got in and I knit one of her patterns. And I think that this is killer. It was like in my head, I was going to knit it anyway. This thing came up and I thought it was great. She has a lot of colorwork motifs, mostly. Sometimes it's texture, but it's usually color work. And she designs primarily, well, she designs for women essentially, and all of her designs come with like a story about like a song or a composer or a series of things from there. So it's really well thought out, and her motifs are really beautiful. This one's a little bit more geometric, but some of hers are a little bit more flowy. I would recommend going and doing that. I would say they're not so masculine looking because she's designing for women essentially. Now, what are the differences between like a men's sweater and a women's sweater? For this one, I have quite narrow shoulders. So what you're gonna get with the men's sweater is they're gonna be broader. So you would need to increase more rapidly. And then the yoke depth right here is usually a little bit deeper. So you need to make that like deeper with the men's typically. And that's how you can modify like a women's to a men's sweater. I usually just make sure the yoke depth is fine. The broadness doesn't really bother me a whole lot. And I modified it to accommodate that with this. The yellow is West Wool Bicycle, which is their fingering weight yarn in Glow. And then the rest is Holst in Black, Lark, Poppy, and Indigo, I want to say. And this is like all over colorwork. This is my first colorwork anything. And it's a fever dream of lines and colors with this beautiful motif. On the back, it's similar, but like the motif is not on the black. One thing I will say is I did the elongated yoke depth, but because it was my first one, my tension was so far off. This is a fingering weight yarn, and I knit this on like 4.5 millimeter needles, which really affected the row gauge, which is usually we want the stitch gauge to be similar to everybody, which is what I got. But then the row gauge was super, super, super far off, especially with like the sleeves on this. It really affected it because it used a needle like 1 millimeter, over 1 millimeter bigger than what she recommended. So it affected things. One thing I will say is that's the beauty of especially like a top-down sweater, is you just knit the length that you need. So I modified this, especially at the end, because I could do that. Like my cuffs and length all turned out a little bit differently, but I knit it to fit me. That being said, I never wear it. I never wear it because it's color. I was like, oh, I'll have one colored piece in my wardrobe, and this isn't my gift to give away bin. It's a beautiful sweater. I think it's amazing. It was so much fun to knit, but I can't wear color. It's a me thing. It's not a anybody else thing. The bicycle feels so soft, and Holst Supersoft is like a recurring theme in my current knitting. I got it initially because I heard a lot about it. I wanted to test it out with this project, and like it's quite affordable, and I didn't want to spend a tremendous amount of money on the sweater, and sometimes I just don't want to spend a lot of money, right? So Holst comes in like cones and things, and they're so affordable. You have to pay shipping, but it's usually not that much, and it's super, super, super worth it. I have some other cones that you'll see that have lasted me quite a long time. It is a thinner and a lighter fabric, so if you're looking for something super warm, I would not really recommend Holst as like a fingering weight one, but because it is color work, it is like double knit essentially, because you have like the stitch, but then you also have another thread running behind it, so it does add some warmth, and it is a like a more lighter yarn, so it has more like air into it, so you'll really get a lot of bang for your buck with this stuff. And it's warm enough. It's not like a super warm, but yeah, and I find it fine, especially the more you wear it and the more you like if you wash it really well. This stuff is super good. I know people have differing thoughts on it. I am a Holst stan. I have knit several garments with Holst, and I think that I would highly recommend it, especially if you're looking for something more affordable, or if you like don't want to, I don't know, invest a whole lot. Price aside, I would use the yarn anyway because it's just a good yarn. So, yeah, that's the Nightbook sweater. Next one we have is my Christmas sweater. This is my festive yoke pullover, and this is by Ellie from Skeindeer Knits. And this is like a fever dream of holiday goodness, and I absolutely love this. I did knit this out of the Holst Supersoft again. I would recommend using a little bit of a thicker yarn, maybe like a heavy fingering or a light sport weight for this sweater, just to get gauged. The Holst Supersoft was too thin because it's a very light fingering in addition to being quite airy. But that being said, it works fine. It feels great. I just don't know if it was the correct yarn for this, and if you held it double, then I was not getting gauged because I was too big. Anyway, this is like a choose your own adventure Christmas pattern. It's a top-down yoke. It's like unisex, and she gives a bunch of different motifs, and you can carry down the motifs throughout the whole body and the sleeves, or you can just do basically whatever you want. So I knit this top down. I did not start with the collar. I started with a cast on, and then I went and I did my 3 favorite motifs, which took me to the end of the yoke. I checked the length of the yoke. I think that it was fine. I don't know if I really knit any more rows to that because I have I don't know, I like a tighter sweater. So that was fine. I wanted the body to be stockinette because I didn't want to do a full colorwork sweater. And then at the end, I had this extra yarn that I bought for my Nightbook. Instead of the dark blue, I was going to use that. And I was like, you know what? We need a reindeer motif on the bottom because it's a Christmas sweater. And then I wanted some like big ass yellow, like red ribbed at the bottom. So that's what I did. I don't know what this brown is. The red is poppy. This is the Ecru color, and then the green is Clover. And then I went and I did the sleeves in Magic Loop, and I did the same motif. Maybe I do it this way so you can see, with the reindeer and the really exaggerated cuff. I redid the sleeve pattern myself because I wanted to do it a little bit differently. I should have made it a little bit bigger, but this was so much fun to wear. I made this is stupid like turtleneck, and it was so much fun to wear over Christmas and holiday seasons and like parties and stuff. I think it looks really nice. It's like a nice but also an ugly Christmas sweater, but I made it. She has like a knit along every year for this, and it's just so much fun. You can customize it. You can make it a holiday sweater. You can make it a winter sweater. You can do whatever you want. The recipe she gives is super easy to work with, and I just think it looks, I don't know, I'm into it. I would highly recommend this. This is I don't know if I said a unisex pattern, but yeah, you can make it to fit anything. It comes in a big range of sizes, and that's my festive yoke sweater. I have to turn the page. Okay, next one, my Rio sweater. So this is the Rio sweater by, and I'm sorry, Reiko Kuwamura. And she is a Japanese knitter. And I was so tired of people with their top-down raglans. And I wanted to do a saddle shoulder construction. And this is a saddle shoulder / set-in sleeve. So what you do is you essentially like knit the top, and then you do like bars on the side is the best way to do it. And then you, do it, you shape, it goes out, and then you go in, and then you pick up for sleeves, do some short rows, and then go down. The texture on this is beautiful. Like, I absolutely love this. Sometimes it was a pain to knit, sometimes it wasn't, but I am into it. Um, one thing that I did think was lacking was on the back of the pattern, it was just plain. There was like supposed to be one portion like up here where it reflects the pattern. But what I wanted to do was echo that on the back, and I did like a little bit of ribbing in the same width. The rows don't match up exactly, but it doesn't really matter. But I wanted to echo that to add a little bit of interest on it, so it's not just like front panel, nothing else. And then the sleeves are picked up and put down, but it has the saddle shoulder, has the same motif, and it goes down the entire length of the sleeve. And I think this is a really beautiful sweater. I think it's really well done. I did not knit the sleeves per the instructions because I just was like, I'm not a small Japanese woman. I made up my own decreases and I got it to how I calculated it, but then it was too big. So like the sleeves are a little balloony on me. That's my own fault. That's not the pattern design's fault. But I would really recommend this. She's just like a little, it looked like a little Japanese knitter. The English translation's not 100%, but that's fine. You can understand what's happening. There are a lot of pictures. And the pattern is great. So this is also not a men's sweater. It has quite a deep yoke though. So I would not worry about that. And then, some men had to extend, based on the Ravelry, a little bit on the length for the shoulders, so it was broad enough, but I measured my chest and stuff, so it wasn't. But in terms of pattern, I would highly recommend this because I think it's really beautiful and it's a construction that's not talked about enough, I guess, these days on the knitting community. It took a little bit to get started, but once you were ready to go, especially once you like joined in the round for like the under and like knit down, it was like easy breezy. It's still a top-down situation, and it worked out great. Another thing I like is because of how you knit it, you almost have like a seam for the collar, and I like that because I think that collars stretch out a lot. So there's team seam, there's team not seam when you're knitting a sweater, especially like the top-down, like the yokes and stuff. They don't have seams with it, essentially. And seams add strength and structure into your garment. Most people don't like seaming and doing it. I don't particularly like it, but I know that those ones don't stretch out as much. And I also know that they will hold a little bit of shape. So if you want to look like broader or more like, then you need to have something that's not going to drape or, go over time. You need something solid, like especially right here. And that's why seams are so beneficial. And that's why like a saddle shoulder it is a good option for that because not only does it highlight the shoulders, but it also, you have to pick up and then it like allows for seaming. Same thing with like a drop shoulder, anything knit in pieces, that sort of thing. So I would highly recommend seams. Now, the yarn for this. I was watching It Is a Sarah, and she was like, oh, I've got this discount code from Edna Puntanel, and it's for like this yarn brand called Jarbo, which is a Swedish yarn brand. And I was like, cool, I'll try it. It's pretty affordable, and it seemed all right. I've worn this for 2 or 3 months now, and I just think the yarn is maybe too coarse. Like, it's not necessarily like a rustic yarn. So as we discussed on a previous podcast, you either have sort of like a rustic yarn is like dreadlocks, like like a really combed merino or something like that. It's more like a ponytail. And this just feels coarse. It softened up a lot with washing, and it did a little bit with the wear, but it still is not like, it's just not like pleasurable to wear. It's not rustic, it's just a little bit like, I don't know, there's like a difference between like a rug wool grade and like a super fine merino, and I think it's like more heading towards the rug wool than not everything has to be merino soft. I quite like a rustic yarn myself, but like something about this, coarse is the best way that I could put it. It's fine. I think it will wear pretty heartily, but I think you need to like beat it up a little bit before you get it. I don't know. I like it. It's not my favorite. The only other thing that I would say is that the nature of the pattern, especially with this dark, is it's pretty see-through. I don't know if you can see my hand here or not. So I recommend, like, I wear an all black shirt underneath this, and that seems to hide like the transparency of the stitch, just because it pulls and stuff like that. It's just the nature of the stitch, and it's fine. Also, this is a DK weight sweater, so it's a little lighter. I haven't been wearing it quite as much because of that, also the yarn, because I'm always cold, but if I have a long sleeve shirt on underneath it that's black, then I will wear this, and it fits great. I think it's a really interesting construction. I'm glad that I did it. I'm interested in knitting more saddle shoulders at one point. I don't have anything planned, but a saddle shoulder I think is really underrated, and we should go for that. Now we're getting to some works in progress. So these next two works in progress are, I've been obsessed with sweaters. I have 2 sweater works in progress. I have another sweaters quantity on the way. I have an idea for even another one that will come up that I want to design, but we'll go for this. But the next 2 are both raglans, which is surprising because I'm a little bit of a top-down raglan hater, and they are stash yarn, which is even more important. So the first one is Justin's Flannel by Alicia Plummer, and I've almost completed this. I'm knitting this for my brother, and it's just like a standard top-down raglan with this little seam texture. I have one sleeve done, I have the body done, and I'm working on the other sleeve. It's simple, it's easy, it's nice. What I thought was interesting about this one is you actually work the shoulder, the like neck shaping flat, and then you just go for it, and I think it's pretty standard. From what I understand about raglans, it's nothing really too special. It just has a little bit of this textured stitch on it, which is really nice. It adds a little bit of interest, it keeps you going. Modifications, I asked my brother what type of collar he wanted, and he said he wanted a folded collar, so we did that. Also, I think it was supposed to be brioche on the collar and cuffs, but I just did 1x1 ribbing because I wanted to keep this easy and like light, so that's what I did. But aside from that, I'm following it pretty close to measurements. I lengthened it a little bit, but it's a good one, and it's a good yarn eater because my brother is bigger than I am, so this is quite large. And yeah, it might make a Saturday shrug out of the extra yarn. But this is my Drops Big Merino. This is the superwash that I ordered, not realizing it was superwash or what to do with superwash. This is the thing that I swatched for on the last episode. It should be fine. It's taking me a while to do this, longer than I wanted to, because work has been so crazy. But we're almost done. I can probably finish it this week, and then we can send it out. But this is a good one. Alicia Plummer has a couple of Mayo pattern designs. She has a ton. I looked on her Ravelry store. She's like 300, but only like a handful of Mayo patterns, and they're similar to this, like a variation on a theme of this. And they're, I would say, pretty good, like first couple of sweaters. Easy to read, easy to follow, easy construction. I think it's fine. Is it something that I would wear? Probably not. But is it fun to knit and well written? Absolutely yes. Now, Drops Big Merino. I don't want to use this again, just because I don't like superwash yarn. I don't like how it, whatever, it's just not my vibe for a bunch of reasons. That being said, I did order some superwash yarn for my next sweater's quantity, but that's a different story, and we'll get to that in another podcast where I'm not talking for like 12 hours. And yeah, it's just a nice, pretty top-down raglan sweater. I would recommend, and I'd look at a couple of her other patterns if you don't like this specific one. But yeah. Two more. One is, you have to look at this. So this comes from Nordic Knits by Blackish. This is how I'm saying it, whether that's how you pronounce it or not. And it is, I think this whole thing is like 3 pages for the pattern, so I don't want to like give it all away. But like, look at this. Look at it. It's like a traditional color work, everything. You can also see it on the cover. It's this one. Ooh, lots of glare. And I just felt like something traditional color work. Sam from Irish Farm Arts once again inspired me for this one. You're supposed to do like a contrasting collar and cuffs, and then have like the dark color be the motif and like a white be the background. And that's not exactly what I'm doing, but I've seen a couple of these. There are like maybe 10 on Ravelry. Everybody's like knitting it with Holst, so I know that works. And yeah, there's one that's in black and white that I also am going to use something similar, and I really liked it. So I bought the book not only for the sweater, but I bought some other yarn for like Nordic mittens, which I'm like obsessed with, and some other things, but different podcasts. Right now we're talking about sweaters. So let me show you what I have. This, we're using Holst Supersoft, and I love a cone. These are 2 from Stash. I think that I'll always have a Holst black, or ink is what I prefer, but I think this is the black one, and an Ecru in my stash. Cones make me feel like I'm a proper knitter, and I do a lot. And these are 2 colors, especially with fingering weight, that I would use all the time. This is really good either on its own or with a mohair. I do want to do like a black Holst, like simple sweater with mohair. And then same thing with this. This would be great, sort of like carrier yarn for mohair for something more neutral. I used this one in my Festive yoke pullover. Anyway, I have these. I have another cone of this. And I was like, cool, I have the yarn for this. I don't have to spend any money. And I get to knit this new sweater. So what I've done is I've just started this. I am modifying it slightly, and you can start to see some of the colorwork patterning. Ooh, this is showing up really nice on camera. Ooh, I like that. Anyway, what I did is I did a tubular cast on with like a provisional cast on, and I made this up out of a couple of different things I saw. But you can do a long tail cast on with 2 different colors so you don't waste yarn. So that's what I did. And then I did like a tubular cast on. So you like knit one and then you yarn over, knit one, yarn over, knit one, yarn over. Next round is you knit the knits, you slip the pearls. Next round is you purl the pearls and slip the knits. And then you can cut off the provisional cast on and you have this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful edge. I knit the ribbing a little bit longer because I like a little bit of a longer ribbing, and then I started with the color work, and I think that this is going to be really nice. This is also a raglan, but this time it is bottom up. So there are 2 ways that you can do something: top down, bottom up, right? What you do is you knit the body, you knit a sleeve, and then you join in the round, and then you work up to the neckband, and you do that. Now, the one thing that I want to flag about that is some people are very passionate about stitch direction. And what I mean by that is when you knit, there's the V, right? So when you do bottom up, the V goes like this, which means that it tends to like theoretically like expand at the top. When you knit top down, the V is then like this, which means that it would like theoretically like expand at the bottom. So if you want like a more controlled fit, some people tend to be like, well, I'm knitting bottom up because that way the V is like that and everything sort of like tucks in. Just something to think about. I don't know if I really have a strong opinion either way, but that's certainly something that you can keep in mind when you're doing something, designing something, who knows, whatever. Like I said, I did modify a little bit. I made the stars and stuff, the Norwegian snowflakes or whatever. I made those white and the background black. I'm making this less exciting than the actual pattern, just because I wanted it to be more black than like half and half or with the pop of color. But that's it, and I started this a couple days ago. I managed to get I did most of the color work yesterday, and it's nice. I like working on it. It's a little bit of a thinker. You do need to pay a little bit more of attention. It's not like a 4-stitch repeat pattern. It's I think like 40, and then you repeat. But compared to my Nightbook sweater, my tension is much better. My gauge is a little bit more solid. I'm using 3.5 instead of 4.5 to get the same sort of gauge, so I've really gone better. Although he recommends like a 2.5. I don't know how he knits. I don't know how he does that, but that's what's happening. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. And this is, once again, this is Holst, so it's going to be a little bit lighter. I could wear this more like spring, warmer days in winter, like fall-ish. And I'll be quite happy with this, I think. And then I get to use up some of my stash, which I think is really nice. Also, between that and the Drops Big Merino, I'm hoping that we can clear some way because I keep on buying stuff. I say that I'm not going to, but then I do. So that's that. That's the book that's come out with it. One more sweater, and then I swear I'll stop talking because this is quite a long video. Is this one. My baby, my dream. The reason why I knit is this sweater. This is my favorite. I know, the Guernsey was my favorite, and then I made this, and I cannot be more obsessed with a piece of knitting than I am with this particular garment. So this is the Salmon sweater. This is by Megan Babin of Hudson and West. Megan is like, she knows her shit. Basically, I think she was an editor of like Interweave magazine, possibly. And she and partner went over and started their own yarn company. It's all like American sourced, American made, American dyed. It's sort of like a Brooklyn Tweed equivalent. They're doing something similar, but with like a slightly different approach. And they have beautiful textured items. They have wonderful like heirloom pieces, especially for like men. I think that this is great. To like look on there, I can make a matching hat with this. How exciting is like let me tell you, like a scarf, jumper, and a hat that all match in like the same yarn and everything. Phenomenal. The yarn is Hudson and West in the color Raven, and I mean, it's the most expensive yarn I've ever bought, but it's also beautiful. Like this, it's so squishy, it's so warm, it's so soft. It's really enjoyable to work with. It's really enjoyable to wear. This was a treat yourself thing because I knew that this was going to be a really special piece. So unlike, like the Nightbook where I wanted to learn how to knit like color work, so I bought, I spent like 40 euros on that sweater. This one I spent much more than that. And it's sometimes you have to do that, and I think that this is definitely an occasion where to do it. This one comes in last because of the construction. So the construction is, it's a raglan, but it's knit in pieces, but it's also a saddle shoulder. So like the sleeves have like, I'm gonna trace this with my hand, but like it goes here and then it goes down to the pits, and that's the raglan, and the sleeves are knit flat. And it's knit in pieces. So you have like a front panel, a back panel, and then 2 sleeves that are knit flat. Seam it all together, do a collar that's sewn in and sewn over. It's phenomenal. It doesn't look great just like laying out. I've tried to take some pictures of it, and I think it looks not the best if I lay it out, but you know, it does look amazing when you wear it on your body. I didn't modify anything because I was too scared, because the way that this pattern was written, it was written so specifically and so rigorously that I was like, if I modify anything, I'm going to shift something that I'm not aware of, and I'm not going to do that. It was just so well done. It is so well done. I mean, like, look at this detail. Can you even see this? The detail, and then like, there's this motif on the center. Oh, it's like, oh. I've gone over the sweater 1,000 times. It is why I started knitting, so I can make cable work sweaters like this. I want another Aran. I want it to be from Hudson and West again. Absolutely phenomenal, and like super, super, super highly recommend. This one was written for men, although I do think that they have like lady modifications on it. I would check out their website if you want, like, you know, heritage, heirloom pieces, but they look nice with the men's stuff. It's really just like, it's a worsted weight wool. It's like all of the cables. It's everything that I like dream of when I close my eyes and I want a sweater. So, and that is that. So, thank you all for listening to me talk about sweaters for like, I don't know, hour and a half, too long. But I didn't have a ton on my needles, and I've been obsessed with sweaters. All of these things, like, I hope I gave you enough information about where, in terms of like how it's going, like on my body over winter, and like the different patterns and stuff like that. And I hope that it inspires you to knit some more male sweaters, or if you're a male, like dip your toe into like the lady sweater pond and like see what may or may not work for you. Because I know it's hard a lot of times to imagine something on a male's body when there are all these like female sweaters, and the men's stuff is kind of boring a lot of times. And I think that talking about this and changing it and giving other people ideas is really helpful. And I hope that this was a little bit of a resource. There are other sweaters in my back catalog. There are more sweaters coming up. Some are self-drafted, some are other patterns and stuff. Really into knitting sweaters. So if you would love to have a conversation about sweaters, I'm your guy. I have lots of thoughts and opinions, clearly, and we can do that. So hopefully work will calm down a little bit, and I can spend more time knitting and like come up with like cohesive things. I have a next podcast coming up, which I'm very excited for because I have some big plans. Yeah. We'll go over what happened with my life another day. But until then, thank you all for joining. I hope you learned about male sweaters and sweater construction and stuff. And I will talk to you later. Bye.